Now, Shmup Collection may be a slightly generic name, but please don't let that fool you. This is some good stuff. If you're fans of shooters, stick around because I'm going to tell you why Shmup Collection is bloody awesome and worth that hard-earned cash of yours. In this collection, there are 3 games, 3 lovely and nicely varied shooters: Armed 7 DX, Satazius next, and Wolflame. I'm not going to go into full depth for each of these just for, brevity's sake, but let me tell you a little bit about each. Firstly, let's start with Wolflame, which is oddly touted as a bonus game, perhaps because the Wii U release doesn't have it for some reason, but for me, it's perhaps the star of the show. Wolflame is the only vertical shooter in this collection, which is usually my preferred style of play. On the surface level, it's perhaps quite a simple example of the genre, but that doesn't make it any less fun. It's one of those vertical shooters where the edge of the screen isn't quite a brick wall, and so you can pan the playfield across, around 30% each way. My initial thought was, well, why not just use up more of the screen? There's plenty of space available to display all and then some. But actually this proves to be a very tactical mechanic, as enemies will only attack when you can see them, allowing you to selectively choose which dangers you'd prefer to take on. Maybe the left side presented a wall of enemies that you didn't like the first time around, well, now you can shift it to the right and deal with that threat instead. Very useful on higher difficulty levels. Wolflame is what I like to call a fidgety shooter. It's a game that makes you look like you're on speed when you're playing it because you can't stay still. Staying still means death. While there are many standard enemies with slow, manageable bullets shooting towards you, you need to look out for the tanks and the turrets. They may look non-threatening, but boy oh boy, they are brutal. They don't shoot often, but when they do, you best be moving, otherwise you're gonna get your ass sniped. It may seem a bit mindless at first, but on normal and higher difficulties, looks can fool you. And that's something that I want to briefly mention about all these games. They each have 4 difficulty levels. I played almost entirely on normal, which, I actually felt was really well balanced, providing a nice challenge that every shooter should, but without being, spitefully difficult. There are 2 higher difficulties for those who want a little bit more pain, and an easy mode which kind of lives up to its name. Alright, Satazius next, or Satazius, whatever it's called, is my second favorite. This is a side-scrolling horizontal shooter of the more methodical, slower type, in the fashion of R-Type or Gradius. You'll be casually blasting away at countless enemies while also trying to scrape through narrow passages and blasting down walls before you run into them. There's a lot of different shot types and combinations you select to at the beginning and can freely switch between them on the fly, and you'll definitely want to experiment with them. You can even unlock more shots as you go along and upgrade the ones that you use the most. I was quite impressed with the level of depth here. I'm finding it difficult to talk about Satazius because it is very stereotypical. It's a slow-paced spaceship shooter with all the tropes that you'd expect, but it does it in such a fantastic way. I would bet good money on this one being the favorite amongst the majority of players, especially those who are, connoisseurs of the genre. It's the thinking man shooter, the shooter that, gentlemen play while sipping on a scotch. Obviously, I'm not that cultured, I'm a hyperactive nutcase, and that's why I like fidgety Wolflame just a tad more. The last one to be addressed is Armed 7. This is a horizontal mech shooter. You're a big chunk of metal blasting at other big chunks of metal in endless explosions. If Satazius is the gentleman shooter and Wolflame is the hyperactive kid shooter, then Armed 7 is the brainless jock shooter. You just blow shit up and, hope not to get shot. And that's not to say that this one doesn't have its merits, but it is my least favorite of the bunch. I'm not a fan of having a massive sprite for your player since, the hitboxes always kind of confuse me. It's a game that's just a mass of explosions and constantly using your charge attack as often as humanly possible. You have 3 weapons at a time which are customizable and nice, so it's a game worth experimenting with. And you'll definitely have a lot of fun with it, but again, it seemed more mindless of the 3 games here. But sometimes that's just what you need in life after a hard day's work. This is a 1-credit game, by the way. The other 2 have checkpoint system and, enough credits to go around, but Armed 7, nope, 1 credit, is back to the beginning. I actually find it quite tough to get through on the normal difficulty. The satellite dish boss just wrecked me every time. But playing on easy, well, I didn't die once. What I like about all these games is the amount of shot types and customization. Each game handles weapons very well, and they're all done differently between the games. Wolflame has a node system where you pick up 2 nodes on your ship on each side. There are only 3 varieties, but you can mix and match, and you'll often find yourself needing different ones for different situations. Satazius, as already mentioned, you can choose a lot of different weapon types and even upgrade them and unlock even more. Armed 7 has an interesting one where, depending on which weapon you choose, it can affect how long it takes for your special attack meter to charge up, which is a tactical balancing act in itself. Both Armed 7 and Satazius include their original release as well as an updated version. I'm not sure if these are exclusive to this re-release or not, but I know they aren't exactly widespread. These two have tweaks, especially in the graphics and sound department, which means there's no reason to ever play the original since the new ones are just so much better, especially Satazius. Satazius and Satazius Next are night and day in terms of presentation quality. I just want to reiterate that none of the games here do anything particularly fancy or revolutionary for the genre. You can see there's an almost fan-made element to them. All 3 are basic enough examples of mechanics that we've seen before. Where they excel, however, is in their understanding of the fundamentals of what makes the classics tick, and they really nailed it. This deeper knowledge of the genre is what propels these 3 games from being, basic knockoffs to fantastic homages. They're budgeted but brilliant. They're obviously heavily inspired by arcade and Mega Drive shooters of the mid-90s, and they absolutely nail it. These games are to Mega Drive shooters as Shovel Knight is to NES platformers. It's not 100% perfect, however. I do have a few gripes with the presentation, which is more bare bones than I would have liked. I feel like I've been spoiled before with options found in like the Arcade Archive series and the Psycho shooters, but some meta options would have been nice. Button mapping would have been greatly appreciated. Even basic things like being able to adjust the sound levels is missing. This is for all the games, by the way. Each of the 3 is lacking any customization in terms of options, with only being able to choose the difficulty levels. The visuals are perhaps the weakest aspect of the game. All the artwork is made by one guy, and while they do serve their purpose, perhaps made with weaker hardware in mind, many of the assets can look, kind of like cardboard cutouts. It does not detract from the core gameplay, but when we've been spoiled by glorious sprite work from other shooter classics, it's easy to look down on these ones just a little. While I could barely notice the difference between Armed 7 and its DX version, unless I put them side by side, Satazius and its updated version are night and day, as the updated version just looks so much better. It's also worth noting that Wolflame is a vertical shooter, and you can put your Switch in Tate's mode to switch the perspective if you own a flip grip, or if you want to go to the next level and turn your TV on its side, which, I can't help but do. Musically, all 3 games are pretty awesome. Satazius Next received a new updated soundtrack compared to the original, and it is so much better. I love the opening level theme, super spacey and chilled. Wolflame features some strange quirks in its soundtrack, like music not looping correctly, awkwardly starting in game, but the songs themselves are awesome. I especially love the dirty, grungy bass in the run-up to the boss fight, so good. Armed 7 is less noticeable, mainly due to the overpowering sound effects, which is, why I lamented the lack of audio options earlier in this review. I'm sure if I could hear the music, it would be awesome too. In terms of pricing, this collection will set you back £13.49 in the UK, $14.99 in Europe, and probably the same in US dollars. I can't check at the time of writing this. That's less than a $5 per game, even less so if you count the variants. For me, for 3 very good shooters, I think that's a fantastic price. Yeah, it may lack the bells and whistles of other shooters on the Switch, but you're getting quality, and I would rank this as even better value than the Psycho collections. You can also purchase them individually if you so choose, although if you end up buying all of them, it will obviously cost you more than buying them as a collection. And I think there's no point in buying them individually, as they're all good quality. It's not like you're getting some lame ones in the package or anything. You might as well go for this collection. And you want even better news? Well, the Shmup Collection is available physically. Oh yeah, baby. You can pick it up on Pixel Heart's website if you're in UK or Europe, or VGNY if you want the ESRB version for our North American friends. You can also find it at some select online retailers, despite being limited to only just 5,000 copies per region. For example, in Europe, you can find it on base.com. For me, I definitely want to get my hands on a copy of this. It's obviously much more expensive than the digital release, but it's also not a full price physical either. You're looking at like less than £30, which for me, to own it physically is worth it. Of course it is. If you're into shooters, then you'll definitely need to get this in your physical collection for sure. If you already picked up their release of Gigantic Army, then you owe this one a purchase too alongside it. I think it's great value for 3 great shooters. Overall, in terms of shooters on the Switch, I really very much enjoyed all 3 of the offerings here. I love that they are accessible but challenging, that they take all the good bits from the classics and smash them together, knowing what the true essence of a shooter is. They're not revolutionary or evolutionary, they're just perfect homages to the classics. There's only 3 games, but they're all varied enough and are essential for any shooter fans out there. I wish there were more options available, even just basic stuff like sound levels, but you can't have everything. If you're a fan of shooters, this collection is an 8.5 out of 10. Alright guys, now perhaps check out another shooter collection review of the Psycho Shooting Stars Bravo. Equally excellent shooter goodness, plus a couple more reviews and videos that you may have missed. Special thanks to our executive producers God of Resin and Dane Wilkinson, plus the support from all of our YouTube members. If you'd like to join them in your support, there are links down below. Alright guys, thanks very much. We'll see you next time. Take care.